بعد أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالتِّينِ وَالزَّيْتُونِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is taking an oath. So by the fig, teen is fig, وَالزَّيْتُونِ, and by the olive. وَطُورِ سِينِينَ, and by the tur of Sinin, and we'll understand what that is. وَهَذَا الْبَلَدِ الْأَمِينَ, and this secure city. We'll just leave it at that, inshallah. This will be enough for a long conversation, but we're going to keep it short, inshallah. Whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes an oath, something is special about whatever He's taking the oath about. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always takes an oath with His creation, with His wondrous creations. For example, وَالشَّمْسِ, by the sun, وَالْقَمَرِ, and by the moon, وَاللَّيْلِ, and by the night. There's something amazing about whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is taking an oath about. I don't know if you know, but there is certainly something special about the fig and something really special about the olive as well. The fig is a fruit. It's not a fruit. It is actually a flower. Many of you will probably stop eating figs after this, but there's nothing to worry. It's all fine, inshallah. It's an inverted flower, and a wasp, female wasp, goes inside to lay its eggs inside the flower. It pollinates the flower closes up on the wasp is disintegrated by the flower, and because the flower needs proteins, just like we need food, and it closes up, matures, and we get the fig. That's the fig. The olive, just very, very briefly. Olive trees take a long time to start bearing fruit when they grow, 4 to 8 years. But that's not the special part about the olive. The olive trees live for a very long time. They live for hundreds of years. There are some species of olive trees that live for thousands of years. There are some olive trees that are around that are probably 2,000-3,000 years old. Subhanallah. They are older than the countries that they're inside, right? The countries are just artificial boundaries. They're older than them, much older. They've seen many, many, many generations. Unfortunately, as you may know, the olive trees are getting destroyed by the Israeli occupation forces that are thousands of years old in Palestine. They have been doing that for 75 years. And they took over the farm, and they started destroying the olive trees. And they're erasing the old Philistine from Philistine. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect them. Okay. We know the word oil. Oil comes from olive. That's how we know. And the Arabic version of olive is what? Zaytun, right? This is where we get zayt from, which is the Arabic word for olive. Zayt. And it's also in Spanish, they call it aceite or something like that. So what teen was zaytun? By the fig and by the olive. وَطُورِ سِينِينَ, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by tur of Sinin. Tur, scholars understand that it's a word from a really ancient language, the language of the Canaanites. Canaan, as they say in Arabic, or in English we say Canaan. It is the old name for the place. Well, it was the people that lived in Philistia, the old Palestine, ancient times. So those are the people that were the Canaanites. And anything that was a high mount, they used to call it Tur. Okay, so we know what Tur is. What is Sinin? That's the Sinai desert. So what does Tur Sinin mean? The mount in the Sinai desert. And where is the Sinai desert? If you imagine where Egypt is, and then there's this little peninsula looking thing, upside down triangle area, and above it is Philistine, right? That triangle area, that's called a Sinai, or it's in Arabic, or Sinin or Sina, that's what it's called. So there's a mount in there. وَهَذَا الْبَلَدِ الْأَمِينَ, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and this balad means a town, okay, or a city or a town. or it can also mean country, but in this context it means town. وَهَذَا الْبَلَدِ, and this town, al-Amin, the town that is secure, that is safe. So 2 fruits and 2 places Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by. What's going on? They are actually all places, not those 2. So scholars say they wanted to reconcile what's going on in this surah, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is swearing by. By the way, what is this secure town? It is understood to be Makkah. Okay? هذا البلد الأمين. And we'll talk about that inshallah. They're all places, scholars say. They wanted to reconcile. How? Okay. In the olden days, a place was also known by the fruit that was prominent in that place. Okay? So for example, what grows in Florida? What is that known as? The big orange, right? Or something like that, right? And in Georgia? So what is fig and olive? It's Philistine. It's actually the land of Sham, the area of Sham. So scholars say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is swearing by the land of the old ancient Sham, which in modern days is divided into, unfortunately, many, many countries. Starts from Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Palestine. That area is called the Northern Arabia. It's the north of the Arabian Peninsula. That's Bilad al-Sham. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is swearing by al-Sham. And then now this is going to make sense. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is swearing by taking an oath of Bilad al-Sham, and then by the Mount Sinai and by Mecca. What does that mean? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, scholars say, is talking about the prophets, alayhimus salam. So Balad al-Amin is which prophet? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? Yes. It could also be Ibrahim alayhi salam? Could be. Yeah. Scholars are not sure. Okay. So it could be both. Why Bilad al-Sham? Most of the Anbiya came there exactly. Who's Abul Anbiya? Who's the father of all prophets? Yes. He's known as the father of prophets. Not that he's not the father of all prophets, but he's the father of the majority of the prophets. How many prophets overall came throughout time? 124,000, they say in a weak hadith. We're not sure. And in the same weak hadith it says 124,000 prophets, out of which 313 or 314 were Rasul, were messengers. So a Nabi is again, there's a difference of opinion, but with the common majority of scholars, they understand that Anbiya are a lower station than the Rasul. They are higher station. There's an even higher station of Rasul, which is the plural of Rasul. There's an even higher station, and there's 5 of them. And there in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about them indirectly, and this is how scholars interpret it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls them ulul azm, the one with strong determination. The prophets with strong determination. So, for example, Dawud alayhi salam was a Rasul. Okay. Sulaiman alayhi salam was a Rasul. People were not necessarily antagonistic against those messengers. They weren't really there to kill them. Okay. There were other messengers as well. There was other Anbiya. Some of the Anbiya, they were killed by the Jews, as we learned in the last khutbah, in the children of Israel. But we don't distinguish between the prophets in the sense that prophets came with different messages. Okay, that's called tafriq. We don't do farq, because what do we learn in the last ayat of Surah Al-Baqarah? La nufarriqu bayna ahadim minhum. We do not do any tafriq. We do not distinguish between any of these prophets. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in same Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, Tilka rusulu faddalna ba'duhum ala ba'd. These were the messengers that we gave a higher degree, we gave more preference over others, and these are the Rusul, and out of which there is a top batch. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Rasulullah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is counseling, فَاصْبِرْ كَمَا صَبَرَ أُولُو الْعَزْمِ مِنَ الرُّسُلِ. Do show patience like the patience of those messengers that has the strongest determinations. Okay, and there's some other ayat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala specifically calls out 5 prophets. 5 prophets specifically. For example, in Surah al-Ahzab, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذْ أَخَذْنَا مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ مِيثَاقَهُم. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took a covenant from the prophets, took a promise, had a contract with the prophets, وَمِنْكَ, and you too, Rasulullah, we took a covenant from you, وَمِن نُوحٍ وَإِبْرَاهِيمَ وَمُوسَى وَعِيسَى ibn Maryam وَأَخَذْنَا مِنْهُمْ مِيثَاقًا غَلِيظًا. And we took a strong covenant from you. There's other ayat as well where we get the hints. So scholars say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is specifically calling out these 5 prophets. Who are they? Ibrahim alayhi salam, the Abu al-Anbiya. Second is Nuh alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam, and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. These 5. These are the 5 messengers, the prophets, the Rusul that are mentioned in these ayat. وَالتِّينِ وَالزَّيْتُونِ وَالطُّورِ سِينِينَ وَهَذَا الْبَلَدِ الْأَمِينَ. So, Balad al-Amin, we already talked about. It is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, definitely. It could also be Ibrahim. What is Turi Sinin? Musa alayhi salam. You guys know the story of Musa alayhi salam? Where did he speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly? On Turi Sinai. Alright. وَالتِّينِ وَالزَّيْتُونِ. As we all know, it's Philistine. Guess what? So, you know the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam? When he left the city? Where was he? You know, where his father, or his, as they say, Azar, or his grandfather, he was a priest, idol maker. So Ibrahim alayhi salam was in the Iraq. What is the modern day Iraq? The Mesopotamia. There's a city named Ur over there. Okay, he's understood. We don't know exactly. All right, this is from ancient, unauthentic sources, but he was in that area in Babylonia. Okay. And then he left. And then what the Quran tells us where he went. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَنَجَّيْنَاهُ وَلُوطًا إِلَى الْأَرْضِ الَّتِي بَارَكْنَا فِيهَا. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected him and Lut. They went to Philistine, the blessed land. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over and over and over in the Quran talks about Bilad al-Sham as the land that was blessed. That's where they went. And Ibrahim alayhi salam is Abu al-Anbiya. What is Bilad al-Sham most famous for? What are the 2 other than Ibrahim alayhi salam? Musa alayhi salam and Isa alayhi salam. Okay, where's Nuh alayhi salam? He's also in Bilad al-Sham, or in that Ur area in the Iraq, because that is also considered to be Bilad al-Sham. Understood? So this surah is talking about the prophets. And I'll just end at this cliffhanger for you. Why? This is the key to understanding this surah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about the best of the best of the best of the best of mankind. Okay? There's regular human beings, right? Like us. There's sinners. There's people who don't sin as much. And then there's really righteous people. There's really abid, zahid, ascetic people. Then there's the salihin, there's awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's anbiya, right? And anbiya, there's different kinds of anbiya. Anbiya that were killed, anbiya that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved. Then there's anbiya on top of anbiya on top of anbiya. It's like ranks and ranks of prophets. And on top of them are the Rusul. And there's ranks and ranks of the Rusul. Are you imagining what I'm trying to paint here? And then on the very top are the 5 ulul azm, those Rusul with the strongest determination. And inshallah, why that's called, maybe we'll touch on that inshallah next time. Abu Huraira, he said, Sayyidul Anbiya Khamsa. The leaders of all of the prophets are 5. Wa Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam Sayyidu Khamsa, and Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he is the leader of the 5. So we are talking about the best of the best of the best of mankind in this surah. This is why this surah is extremely important. And if you didn't know this, you wouldn't really understand the surah that much. And then, inshallah, we will cover Barakallah.